I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today, we're going to review an artist that I was previously unfamiliar with, Majical Cloudz. The album's called Impersonator. Majical Cloudz is the official moniker of a guy named Devon. I think it's Devon or Devon, I'm not sure. I'm going to go with Devon Welsh. And we suck at pronouncing things.
It's like the hardest part of this.
I swear we're just the most terrible pronouncers that ever walked the earth. But Devon Welsh, this album is an intimate listen. I mean, if there's one word I would choose to describe this entire album, it's intimate. It's minimalistic in its production because what you have, I mean, he's basically synth pop, but I wouldn't like to call it synth pop because it's so minimalistic. And when I think of synth pop, I think of pop melodies, like synth-based pop melodies with beats and everything like that. Where this is like elongated, like very strung out, like moody, atmospheric backings, and really the entire focus of this sound is on Welsh's vocals. I mean, I really feel like the whole point of this album is to convey emotion through his very rich, almost like Matt Berninger's vocals in The National. Like he just has this very rich, powerful baritone vocals that convey a ton of emotion. Tom, what was your take on Impersonator? What did you think of it? How was the sound effect?
I mean, I agree with everything that you just said. The focus is definitely on the vocals. It's almost like if he could have gotten away with it, he would have just had an album of all vocals.
And then, it's like the music's just to be there to be like the XX on their first album.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. That's a good comparison. And here you have these very minimalistic instrumental setups that are really just to build a foundation for the mood that is conveyed in the vocals. And that's something that was really kind of the make or break for me on this album, because at first, like, I didn't even know what to think after I listened to this album for the first time.
It's kind of weird.
Because it's kind of dark, but it's got this optimistic vibe about it. It's a lot of the lyrical themes have to do with childhood and death. Maybe some regret, love. But what's interesting is it always has this kind of, not upbeat musically, but upbeat as in attitude, kind of flair to it. It's almost sung like someone who's singing from their deathbed, but was very happy about their life.
It's reflective in nature.
Yes, exactly.
I agree. The lyrics were a big part of what sucked me into this album. But whenever I hear an album and I can identify that, okay, the focus of this is on the vocals, not only in the mixing, but in how like the tracks were written, how the melodies were constructed, how the whole song is set up. When I can tell that, I usually dive straight into the instrumentation, because to me, that's the key of understanding the balance between the two and whether or not a song works. I've seen in albums we've reviewed in the past where that alignment wasn't there, and then it just doesn't work, and the whole thing kind of falls apart because the instrumentation and the vocals didn't align to the same goal. In this, you have a very thin layer, like whether it's guitar or the synth or the strung out synths, it's very, very thinly produced, and it's not loud, it's very subtle, and it creates this thin layer of atmosphere, just enough backing sound to complement the vocal part and give it a foundation. And I really feel like it just enhances the emotion being presented in the vocals.
But that's really what the album is dependent on, is whether that emotion works, because this is so intimate and personal that you almost feel like sometimes the guy's getting lost in his own head and his own thoughts, and it's hard to connect to at times, just because it's so, I don't want to say so out there, but so in there, as in like so much, just so personal. It's like, how can I even connect to someone's personal story?
And so what happened to me is I connected with certain tracks.
And I was the same way.
And I feel like the tracks that I think collectively as Velocities in Music that we favored seem to be the tracks that really committed to either a darker or lighter emotion. In like This Is Magic, which is a kind of a darker track, and then track 9, which we both liked, Bugs Don't Buzz. I mean, the lyrics in that song
is great,
mind-blowing. Those are two darker tracks. We both picked them, and then Childhood's End we both picked, and you picked Silver Rings, and those are two a bit more optimistic sounding tracks. So I mean, like the tracks where he was really committing towards a certain mood, we seem to gravitate more towards the in-between tracks that are still good, like I Do Sing For You, Mr. Illusion. I didn't feel like those tracks were quite on the same level, or at least I didn't find myself attaching to them as
I agree, and I think the reason is because those were the ones that were a little harder to connect to, because I didn't feel like his intent was as clear. Like he didn't put it out there for me to get. Those were the songs where I felt like I was getting a little bit of a mixed message. But that's, you know, that's the thing when you're writing music that is very emotionally based. You have to write it in a way that people can really connect to. And that's going to be different for different people. Right. Some people will have a very easy time connecting to this. For me, it was almost like he sang this and wrote it not even thinking about an audience. No, just as if it was his musical diary that no one else would ever take a look at. And sometimes that's a really cool approach, but sometimes you're almost shutting people out from really seeing what you're doing. Yeah. And I think a lot of what that comes down to is, you know, not only the way he wrote it, but also just the fact that the vocals were the focus, because there's not really anything else to attach to. We talk all the time about Radiohead being a band that you can kind of attach to the vocals or the instrumentals. We listen to that band very differently, despite the fact that we both love that band, because there's so much to listen to, so many points of entry. Here, it's like the vocals are it. That's what you have to focus on. Because the way it's mixed, with the vocals being up front, and the way it's written with just very minimalistic instrumentals. So whether you attach to those vocals or not is going to completely determine the success of this album.
And one thing that helps you attach to him is just the kind of the weird nuances in his voice, where like he'll yell at times. Yeah. He does all this really cool just stuff with his vocals that you don't hear normal vocalists do. This guy definitely exudes a lot of personality with his vocal presentation and the parts that he writes. He allows it. I mean, it kind of gives an authenticity to the emotions that he's providing. So maybe the tracks where he's doing that more, the tracks we're kind of relating to more because it's pulling you in. Yeah. And since the vocals are the primary thing you're focusing on, we get into that more. So that's definitely something helping the album. Overall, this album, while it was hard to get into at first, the more I got into it, I was like, wow, this is really rewarding and fun to just analyze and try to understand where he was coming from. And then, you know, the emotional resonance that I got from the tracks that did hit me, you know, that was very powerful too. So it was very enjoyable to listen to this, although I agree with everything Tom said. So I think I'm sitting at a 79.
I'm going to go 77.
So upper 70s, which is, it sounds worse than it is, but that's a stamp of approval from Velocities of Music. Usually upper 70s is an album that we would definitely strongly recommend to you guys that you go check this out and tell us what you think at www.velocitiesofmusic.com, our website, which has a list of every single review we've ever done. Ever. And some of them are, like, some of the early ones are just embarrassingly bad. I gotta say, I went back.
But we have to live up to them.
We have to just, we have to prove that we've gotten better over the 3.5 years we've been doing this. So if you ever get, you know, bored and want just a good laugh, go look at some of our first episodes. So leave us a comment there. Also, leave us a comment on our YouTube channel. And please follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and start a conversation with us about the music you've been into lately. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.
But still